La Bataille de la Restigouche, the naval battle that would ultimately define where French and English would be spoken in the Canadian Maritimes. 200 years later, an incredible feat of scuba diving and archaeology finally brought its mysteries to the surface. From breathtaking views high above Chaleur Bay to the depths of the Restigouche River, embark on a fascinating journey that shaped La Gaspésie's maritime history, culture, and economy into what it is today. September 1759. Quebec City has just fallen to the British, plunging the future of New France into dire straits. On April 10, 1760, the frigate Le Machault set sail from Bordeaux under Lieutenant François Le Giraudet. Along with 5 merchant ships, its task is to deliver provisions and troops to Quebec. By mid-May, the French flotilla arrives in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Seeking safe harbor, Le Giraudet directs his fleet into Chaleur Bay, where they anchor in the Restigouche River near a native Micmac settlement who were French allies. When the British arrived at the end of June, the French tried to draw them to the Acadian settlement of Pointe-à-la-Batterie. Their surprise attack was foiled when the British maneuvered around the blockade and burned the village to the ground, marking the official start of the Battle of the Restigouche. The French and Acadian militia retreats to regroup with Le Machault. They set up 2 new batteries on the river near Pointe-aux-Sauvages, which today is Campbellton, New Brunswick. But the British quickly defeat those batteries, forcing Le Giraudet further upriver. On July 8th, 2 British ships come face to face with Le Machault. Realizing he's cornered, Le Giraudet scuttles both Le Machault and the merchant ship Bienfaisant to prevent the British from capturing their cargo. The French forces retreated to the shore. Their loss at the Battle of the Restigouche, plus the fall of Montreal a couple of months later, pretty much sealed the fate of New France. But the story of the battle doesn't end there. Fast forward 200 years to 1960, when scuba divers were diving on the bottom of the Restigouche River and came across a shipwreck. But it wasn't just any old shipwreck they found. They had found Le Machault. And in one of the most challenging archaeological excavations in modern history, Canadian teams were able to recover pieces of Le Machault and bring them to the surface. Because the wreck was basically buried in really cold, thick mud, it was absolutely pristinely preserved. And you can see both artifacts from the wreck, as well as weapons and pieces of Le Machault, on display at the Battle of the Restigouche National Historic Site in Pointe-à-la-Croix, Quebec.
So this is an actual piece of the French warship, the Machault. And you actually still smell the mud, because it was buried in the mud in the river. And you can very faintly still smell the mud in it.
And even though it was scuttled along with Le Machault, I do not know whether the Bienfaisant has ever been found. And one other cool little factoid, piece of history, whatever you want to call it, about La Bataille de la Restigouche, is that when the British and the French signed the peace treaty ending the 7 Years' War, which is the war that battle was part of, the French agreed to cede the rest of what's now Canada to the British, but in return, the British gave back full control of the islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique to France. So yeah, that's La Bataille de la Restigouche, another piece of fascinating maritime history up here in Quebec. And now we are on to the Parc Régional du Mont-Joseph for more spectacular vistas and lookouts. Well, here we go, up the mountain. If drive in here was any indication, that view at the top is going to be absolutely spectacular. That sign there just claimed that grades on this road reach up to 32%, so this should be interesting. crap, this is a steep hill. So we've made it here to the summit of Mont Saint-Joseph. The views, can't see the views behind me because I'm trying to kind of hide out of the wind here, but they are absolutely spectacular. We are, let's see, about 500 to 600 meters elevation here. And there's another belvedere up at the true summit. So let's go. But yeah, you should be able to hear me with the wind now, but there's the view. And we're still only in the parking lot. So here's La Belvedere. And this is why you come up to places like Mont Saint-Joseph. Get a look at this view. But yeah, so what you're looking at here is down on the coast there is the village of Carleton-sur-Mer, and you can just barely see New Brunswick across the way there. But if you open up, look out that way, that's the wide open ocean. I have no idea how far this boardwalk goes along here, but this is magnificently beautiful. Yeah, so this thing right here is interesting. It says if you look closely enough, right there, there is actually tundra on the Gaspésie, which I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that that's probably up at the very top of Gaspésie National Park, because that's where the tallest points on La Gaspésie are. You also have up at the top of the mountain here this beautiful little church. Well, here's a brave soul. Got a guy on a bike loaded down with crap trying to bike up this giant hill. Well, you saw the sign. Grades range from 13 to 32% on this hill, so your engine braking is only going to do so much on that. You pretty much have to use the brakes, because even in the lowest gear I have, this thing is still running away on me going down some of these hills. But yeah, whatever you do, do not ride your brakes down that hill. You will burn them up and lose them. But yeah, it's always very therapeutic being on the water right next to the ocean like this. Saw it at the California coast last summer, and see it again now here at La Gaspésie. So there is a Parks Canada facility here that talks about the history of the fishing industry and how important seafood is to the entire Gaspé region. But I ended up driving down past it and found this beautiful little beach to take a walk on. So we're just going to walk the beach and learn about some of the importance of the fishing and seafood as we walk the beach. And I just did go down and stick my hand in the water there, and what was interesting is that when we were out covering Hurricane Lee down on the Cape a couple of weeks ago, which actually prevented us from coming up here, I looked up the water temperature in Bar Harbor, Maine when Hurricane Lee was coming through, and it was 55, and the water here is definitely chilly, but I don't think it's 55 chilly. Yeah, I'd guess it's probably somewhere between 60 and 65. I did look up the water temperature out at Percé is 13 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but they stick out a lot more into the ocean than here, and I'm in Gaspé. And one other interesting thing about the water temperatures around here is that the bay that's out in front of me, which you're not going to be able to see because it's looking straight into the sun right now, is called La Baie des Chaleurs, which means the Bay of Heat. And from what I've read online, it got its name because the water temperature in the bay was noticeably warmer than pretty much everywhere in the surrounding areas. So when I stick my hand in the water and it feels warmer, you can thank La Baie des Chaleurs. And there's actually a nice little spit here you can hike out onto, which I'm sure at higher tide is probably an island, but we're gonna go check it out. I didn't even realize it. There's a seal just chilling on the beach right here. Hi, buddy. He's taking his mid-afternoon siesta, but we're not gonna bother him. We'll move on. Yeah, here's the end of this little spit here, which is not truly the end of the world. We'll get to that in a few days up at Forillon National Park, but it certainly feels like it here on this little spit off of Gaspé, Quebec. And you're probably not going to be able to see it, but right in where all the glare is from the sun, there are two seals, just a few meters off the beach there. So yeah, much like back in New England, the fishing and seafood industry up here at Gaspé is critically important, both for their culture and for their economy and ultimately their well-being. And it seems like, every little town you drive into out here, no matter where you look, there's some kind of poissonnerie, fish market, or seafood restaurant, or anything like that. It seems like everywhere you turn, there's one there. And this region claims to have some of the best lobsters in the world as well. I'm not sure whether I'll get around to trying them or not. I may cheap out. But one thing that I am going to try, and this goes back to my days traveling down to Puerto Peñasco in Mexico. But once we get around onto the north side of the Gaspé, there's a little town up there, and I'm blanking on the name right now. But there's supposedly some kind of cold water shrimp that live in these waters off of the Gaspé. And there's this one little town up there that claims to have the best shrimp in the region. So that I will probably try and track down while I'm up there, but that's still several days away from now. But yeah, I think from here we're on to the town of Percé, which has got the most iconic landmark in all of La Gaspésie. That's where we're going, to the waterfalls. We got another hurricane coming for the Canadian Maritimes.